before they became the most feared conquerors the world had ever seen. They were children of the eternal blue sky. This is the story of the Mongols, a story that begins not with the clash of steel, but with the whisper of the wind across the endless steppe. Our journey starts with Tengri, the eternal blue sky. For the ancient Mongols, the sky wasn't just a ceiling over their world. It was their supreme deity. It was the source of all life, the ultimate judge, and the power that guided their destiny. This profound spiritual connection to nature wasn't just a belief system. It was the very fabric of their existence. It taught them to read the signs in the clouds, to respect the earth beneath their feet, and to see themselves as part of a grand cosmic order. This worldview, this sense of divine purpose, forged a people ready to answer a call to greatness. A people who believed they were destined to rule the world under one sky. But before they could conquer empires, they first had to conquer their own environment. The vast, unforgiving steppe. Life here was a constant struggle for survival, a relentless cycle of movement and adaptation. This was the ultimate training ground. From the moment a Mongol child could walk, they were taught to ride a horse. Horses weren't just transport, they were extensions of themselves, their partners in hunting, herding, and warfare. Their home, the ger, was a masterpiece of nomadic engineering, a portable, felt-covered dwelling that could be dismantled and reassembled in a matter of hours. This lifestyle demanded incredible resilience, resourcefulness, and a discipline that no army could ever drill into its soldiers. Every man, woman, and child was a hardened survivor, a master of archery and horsemanship. The steppe didn't just shelter them, it sculpted them into the most effective military force in history. Into this harsh world, a boy named Temujin was born. His origin story is not one of privilege, but of blood, betrayal, and a will forged in the crucible of suffering. His father, a minor clan chief, was poisoned by rivals, and in an instant, Temujin's world shattered. Cast out by their own tribe, his family was abandoned to starve on the desolate plains. He was hunted, enslaved, and forced to witness unimaginable brutality. But these hardships didn't break him, they sharpened him. Each betrayal taught him a lesson in loyalty. Each escape honed his strategic mind. Within this abandoned boy, a fire was kindled. It was the fire of vengeance, but also of a vision of a world where loyalty was rewarded, and the chaos of tribal warfare was replaced by the order of a unified nation. The boy holding a blood clot in his fist at birth was slowly becoming the man who would one day hold the world in his grasp. The time had come for the boy to become a Khan. Temujin emerged from the shadows of his youth, not just as a survivor, but as a leader of extraordinary charisma and tactical genius. He began the impossible task of uniting the fractious, warring Mongol tribes. He did it not just with force, but with a revolutionary vision. He broke the old aristocratic power structures, promoting soldiers based on merit and loyalty, not on bloodline. He forged alliances with brilliant strategy and, when necessary, crushed his enemies with ruthless efficiency. One by one, the rival clans, the Tatars, the Karites, the Naimans, bent the knee. In the year 1206, a great assembly, a Kurultai, was called. There, on the banks of the Anan River, the scattered tribes of the steppe proclaimed Temujin as their supreme ruler. They gave him a new name, a title that would echo through eternity: Genghis Khan, Great Khan, ruler of all who live in felt tents. The shepherd boy from the forgotten plains was now the master of the largest land empire the world had ever known. The age of the Mongols had begun. Hey everyone, and welcome back to our epic journey through the Mongol Empire. Last time, we saw Temujin unite the steppe tribes and become Genghis Khan. Today, we witness the unleashing of his creation upon the world. The time for consolidation is over. The era of conquest has begun. The world was about to meet the Mongol war machine. First on the list were the powerful kingdoms of the Jin dynasty in northern China and the Tangut Empire of western Xia. These were not minor skirmishes. They were the first terrifying campaigns that would set the precedent for decades to come. Imagine armies, tens of thousands strong, pouring across the plains. Cities that had stood for centuries were about to face a new kind of warfare. It was here, in these initial, brutal conflicts, that the Mongols perfected their signature blend of psychological warfare and overwhelming force. They didn't just want to defeat their enemies. They wanted to break their will to fight, sending a chilling message to anyone who dared to stand in their way. The campaigns against the Jin and Western Shi'ai weren't just battles. They were the bloody forge where the Mongol art of war was hammered into its most lethal form. So what was the secret? What made the Mongol army, a force from the remote steppes, seem utterly invincible? It wasn't just numbers, and it certainly wasn't just brute strength. It was a revolution in military thinking. Let's break down their revolutionary tactics. You've probably heard of the feigned retreat, a maneuver so difficult to pull off, yet the Mongols mastered it. They would pretend to break and flee, luring disciplined enemy formations into a chaotic pursuit, only to turn and envelop them in a storm of arrows. But their genius went far beyond a single tactic. Their cavalry, the famed arrow riders, were the fastest and most resilient light horsemen in the world, capable of covering vast distances and living off the land. They were masters of siegecraft, learning and adapting, turning the expertise of captured engineers against their former masters. And perhaps most importantly, they had an unmatched intelligence network. Their spies, or Nakir, would map out enemy lands, sow discord, and provide critical information long before the main army ever arrived. This wasn't just a horde. It was a sophisticated, intelligent, and terrifyingly effective fighting force. The most advanced military machine of the medieval world. But what happens after the storm passes? After the conquest, after the terror, something unexpected happened. An era of unprecedented peace and stability descended upon the lands the Mongols had conquered. Historians call it the Pax Mongolica, the Mongol Peace. For the first time in history, a single power controlled the vast expanse from Eastern Europe all the way to China. This political stability secured the legendary Silk Road, transforming it from a series of dangerous, fragmented paths into a transcontinental highway. Merchants could travel from Venice to Beijing with a single Mongol passport at Pesa, knowing they were protected. This didn't just boost trade. It triggered one of the greatest cultural exchanges in human history. Gunpowder, the printing press, the compass, medical knowledge, art. And ideas flowed freely in both directions, reshaping the global economy and spreading technologies that would fundamentally change the course of civilization in Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. It was a peace bought with blood, but it connected the world like never before. While the Pax Mongolica brought stability to the East, the Mongol wave was just beginning to crash upon the shores of Europe. The armies of the Great Khan did not stop. Genghis Khan's grandson, Batu Khan, led the Western charge, a campaign of such speed and ferocity that it left Europe reeling. This is the story of the Golden Horde. They swept across the plains of Russia, sacking cities like Kyiv. In Moscow, their legendary horse archers proving more than a match for the heavy knights of the Rus principalities. The invasion was a cataclysm that fundamentally altered the course of Eastern European history. Beta's campaigns established the dominion of the Golden Horde, a powerful Mongol state that would rule over the Russian lands for nearly 250 years. This long period of Mongol overlordship, the so-called Tatar yoke, left a lasting and complex imprint on Russian culture, politics, and national identity, a legacy that is still debated and felt to this very day. From the conquest of China to the gates of Vienna, the Mongol impact was global and absolute. But the empire was now stretching to its limits, and fractures were beginning to show. In our next episode, we'll explore the death of the Great Khan, the succession crisis that tore his empire apart, and the story of his grandson, Kublai Khan, who would trade the steppe for a palace and become the Emperor of China. Last time we saw the empire stretch across the world, and we dive into its dramatic final acts and enduring legacy. Story picks up with Genghis Khan's grandson, Hulagu. He rode west, not just to conquer but to reshape the Middle East. In 1258, his forces stood before the legendary city of Baghdad, the heart of the Islamic Golden Age. The Caliph refused to surrender, and what followed was one of history's most catastrophic sieges. The city, a beacon of knowledge and culture for 5 centuries, was utterly devastated. The Grand Library of Baghdad, with its countless priceless manuscripts, was destroyed. Accounts say the Tigris River ran black with the ink of books and red with the blood of scholars. This was a seismic shock to the Islamic world. From these ashes, Hulagu established a new Mongol state, the Ilkhanate, covering Persia and beyond. But this wasn't a simple story of conquerors versus the conquered. It was a fascinating and complex cultural encounter. Initially, the Mongol rulers, who followed their traditional shamanistic beliefs, governed a predominantly Muslim population. There was tension, but also exchange. Persian art, science, and administrative techniques began to influence the Mongol court. The Mongols, in turn, secured the trade routes, creating a period of relative peace known as the Pax Mongolica, which allowed for unprecedented cultural and commercial exchange. Over time, something remarkable happened. The conquerors began to adopt the culture of those they had conquered. Hulagu's descendants, faced with the administrative and cultural realities of ruling Persia, started to convert to Islam. By the end of the 13th century, the Ilkhanate had officially become an Islamic state. This transformation was profound. The Mongol rulers became patrons of Islamic art and architecture, leading to a new, blended Perso-Mongol style. They rebuilt cities, sponsored observatories, and commissioned magnificent illustrated manuscripts. The Ilkhanate shows us that conquest isn't a one-way street. It's a dynamic process that transforms everyone involved. Meanwhile, on the other side of the empire, another of Genghis's grandsons was forging a new destiny. Kublai Khan, the Great Khan, set his sights on completing the conquest his grandfather had begun, the subjugation of all of China. This was no easy task. The Southern Song dynasty was wealthy, populous, and defended by mighty rivers and fortified cities. It took decades of relentless campaigning. Finally, in 1279, the last Song resistance was crushed. For the first time in history, all of China was under foreign rule. Kublai Khan was not just a warrior, he was a visionary statesman. He moved his capital to what is now Beijing, calling it Dadu, or Great Capital. He declared the founding of a new Chinese dynasty, the Yuan. This was a brilliant political move. By adopting a Chinese dynastic name and a Chinese-style administration, he presented himself not as a foreign conqueror, but as a legitimate son of heaven, holder of the mandate of heaven. The Mongol Empire had reached its absolute zenith. From the Pacific Ocean to the borders of Hungary, one family ruled the largest contiguous land empire the world has ever known. Under Kublai, the Yuan dynasty was a period of extraordinary openness. He welcomed foreigners to his court, most famously the Venetian merchant Marco Polo, whose writings would later captivate Europe. He built a vast network of roads and canals, standardized weights and measures, and even introduced paper money nationwide. It was an era of stability and bustling trade. Cultures, technologies, and ideas flowed freely along the revitalized Silk Road. Gunpowder, the compass, and printing, all Chinese inventions, made their way west, where they would eventually help ignite the European Renaissance. But even at its peak, the seeds of the empire's decline were already being sown. So, how does an empire that vast, that powerful, begin to crumble? The answer is as complex as the empire itself. The sheer size of the Mongol realm made it incredibly difficult to govern. Communication was slow, and local Mongol leaders grew more independent. A major issue was succession. The Mongols never established a clear, undisputed system for passing down power. Every time a great Khan died, it triggered a political crisis, often leading to civil war as different factions vied for control. The empire was tearing itself apart from the inside. Kublai Khan's invasions of Japan and Java ended in costly failures, draining the treasury and denting the myth of Mongol invincibility. His successors lacked his vision and administrative skill. They struggled to balance their Mongol identity with the demands of ruling a sophisticated Chinese society. Then came a catastrophe that no army could fight, the Black Death, the plague, thought to have originated in Asia, spread like wildfire along the Mongol trade routes. It decimated populations across the Eurasia, from China to Europe. The pandemic caused social breakdown, economic collapse, and a crisis of faith. In China, it fueled a wave of popular rebellions against the foreign Yuan rulers. At the mid-14th century, the Great Mongol Empire was fracturing. The Golden Horde in Russia, the Chagatai Khanate in Central Asia, and the Ilkhanate in Persia were now effectively independent, often warring states. In China, a peasant rebel leader named Zhu Yuanzhang rose to power. drove the Mongols out, and established the Ming dynasty in 1368, the once mighty Yuan court fled back to the Mongolian steppes. The hoofbeats that had once shaken the world were fading. The world's largest land empire had dissolved in just over a century. But the story doesn't end there. The shadow of the Mongol Empire is long, and its legacy is woven into the fabric of our modern world. Politically, the Mongols redrew the map. The territories they unified, like Russia and China, formed the basis of the modern nations we know today. Their promotion of trade created the first truly global network, connecting East and West, catalyzing an age of exploration. Columbus, in fact, was sailing west in search of the fabled riches of the great Khan's lands described by Marco Polo. Genetically, their legacy is staggering. Modern studies have shown that a significant percentage of men in a vast region of Asia share a common Y chromosome lineage traced back to Genghis Khan and his family. It's a stark reminder of the sheer scale of their conquest and influence. Culturally, they were a conduit. They didn't just transmit goods. They transmitted ideas, technologies, and even diseases that reshaped societies everywhere. From gunpowder warfare in Europe to Persian art in China, the world was permanently cross-pollinated. The Mongol Empire was a paradox, brutal in its creation, yet a unifier in its existence. It was a brief, explosive moment in history that irrevocably altered the course of human civilization. It demonstrated that the world was interconnected, and that the actions of a nomadic people on the steppes of Mongolia could have consequences for billions of people centuries later. The story of the Mongols is a testament to the power of vision, the brutality of conquest, and the enduring human drive to connect, to trade, and to build new worlds from the ruins of old ones. Thank you so much for joining us on this epic saga. If you've enjoyed this series, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next historical adventure.
I will see you in the next video.